Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Pat Fogarty, and I am very lucky in that I get to teach the wellness nutrition classes at Levine Cancer Institute. This is a really wonderful time of the year, and it's also really can be a very challenging time of the year. I'm just going to open up my screen here to show you my flyers. We're coming into Christmas, and instead of one big feast that we have to kind of control ourselves at, we have a whole 6 weeks of parties and get-togethers and things at the office and things with friends and things with family. And so this is why it's so important to just not overdo it at any one place, and but to watch that little bit of eating between events, especially if you're the type of person that has like a lot of traditions where you like to make a certain type of cookie, or you make four different types of cookies and bring them to different things. It's really easy to nibble on one here and one there, and that's what usually ends up adding up to all the weight gain. And the average American will gain about 2 to 4 pounds throughout the holidays. Now, and I always teach in my classes, how much do we need to eat? When you look at food labels on food packages, most women who are over 50, it's only about 1,600 calories for the whole day. And that's really just to stay where we are. If you're a younger woman under 50, you could eat probably about 1,800 calories. So if you're having a piece of cheesecake and it's 600 calories and you have 1,600 calories for the whole day, you can see where it could definitely lead to some weight gain. And so that's what I want to show you. It's just some little tips to help you avoid all those kinds of things. Um, so let's think about, we have a big function that we're going to later on in the day. So earlier in the day, try to plan ahead. I do this even when I'm going out to dinner. Like say I know that I'm going to a nice restaurant for dinner. It's going to be a heavy dinner. Just so you know, the average meal at a place like Chili's or one of those places, those entrees that they give you are usually over 1,000 calories. So it's always a good idea to try to bring some of that home. And earlier in the day, try to eat a little bit more lightly. So instead of having something like a croissant for breakfast, which is very fatty, maybe have a bowl of high fiber cereal with skim milk. Just kind of plan ahead a little bit. Try to have something that's going to fill you up. And it's really fiber that's the best thing for filling you up. This is why I love people to have whole wheat bread or cereal that has some fiber in it, or even a piece of toast, that has that extra fiber. So when you're looking at food labels, look for things with 3 grams or more of fiber. That's a good high fiber source of bread or cereals, those sorts of things. Lunchtime, try to keep it a little bit light. So maybe a salad with some grilled protein. So maybe you like to have some grilled chicken or a little bit of if you have leftover cooked shrimp, you could throw it on there, or maybe you do tuna fish. And if you are a vegetarian, you could do something with beans or tofu. When you're picking your dressings, please be careful, because I have seen people ruin a perfectly good salad with 600 or 700 calories of dressing. So when you look at your dressing label, the typical serving is 2 tablespoons. Now that might sound like a lot, but when you're pouring it, sometimes it's easy to pour a quarter of a cup on your salad, especially if it's a big salad. So pay attention to the portions there. So just try to keep a little bit lighter earlier in the day. Take a walk earlier in the day as well. Okay. This is one of the big things that we all fall into the pattern as it's getting cooler out and we're so busy with shopping and everything else. We tend to let the exercise go by the wayside. So try to make sure that each day you're doing a little bit of walking. If any of you have iPhones, then you know that you have a pedometer on your iPhone that can count your steps for you. I downloaded a free one to I don't have an iPhone, so I have the Android. So I downloaded a free one. That's a great thing to do, because you can kind of see how many steps you're doing in a day if you have your phone with you. And you can maybe add a few extra steps each week. So let's say it's January 1st and you have this resolution to exercise more. And you notice when you look at your steps that you're only doing 1,200 steps a day, which is really low. Maybe every week, try to do an extra 1,000 steps a day. And then the next week, get another 1,000. And before you know it, you're going to be up to 5 or 6 or 7,000 steps. And 7,000 steps is a wonderful goal. In case you've ever read things about you have to do 10,000 steps, they really have found that 7,000 is fine. I love walking because it's the easiest thing to do. And we have no excuses because everyone has a pair of sneakers someplace, and we can walk around the block, and you can break it into 2 15-minute walks if you'd like. Also, too, walking outside, I love because you're getting fresh air. And remember when you were a kid and your mom used to say, go outside and play and get some fresh air. So when we are outside and we're getting some fresh air, it really helps us sleep. And that can help us with the stress of the holiday season too, just kind of unwinding, helping us fall asleep a little bit faster. Also to take some time to try to relax as well. So if you like Christmas music, I know lots of radio stations are playing them, whatever you'd like to do something relaxing in the day before you go to your party, just to make sure that you're not too stressed out and you're not going to stress eat. Now, about an hour before the party, eat something small. And I would say, I didn't put it in here, but I would say maybe something with a little bit of protein and fat. So that's why I have nuts written down, because nuts are a very good source of both a little bit of healthy fat and protein. So they kind of keep you feeling full a little bit longer than if you ate the same number of calories from pretzels, like something that's just starchy. So a half an ounce of nuts is a great thing to eat. So when you look at a food label for nuts and it says 28 almonds is a serving, just eat half of that amount. And that's a good snack size for nuts. So pecans are great, walnuts, pistachios, any of those. So I like people to have nuts before they go to parties, just because this way it helps you not overeat when you get there, because you're not too starving. And if you happen to drink something alcoholic right away, there's also something in your stomach, which is a good thing. Now, always bring something to the party that's healthy. All right. We know everybody's going to have really creamy dips. They're going to have those little hot dogs and the buns and the mini quiches and things like that. So bring something that is lower calorie. Not that you have to avoid the other things, but that you can fill up your plate, maybe a third of your plate with some carrot sticks, celery sticks. And at the end of my package, I got a great recipe for a low-fat onion dip. So this way, you can indulge and fill up a little bit with those things and not overdo it with the fattier things. I do enjoy the baked chips. So there's lots of good baked potato chips now. There's baked corn chips. Those are much better because they're much lower in fat. So if you do want to have chips with your dips, pick the baked chips instead. And salsa, which usually people have with tortilla chips, is a great option because that's usually very low calorie too. So salsa is a good thing to include. Now they're all a little salty, so if you have high blood pressure, don't overdo it with those things, but they can be a good option in terms of calories. Be careful with those pigs in the blanket. I know my family loves those things, so we do have them for the holidays. But if I'm going to have one, maybe I'll just have one little one, and then I'll have some other things. But it's really the quiches, the dips, those kinds of things, and anything that's been fried, okay, we know is going to be really high in calories. And then also, in addition to bringing something healthy to eat, bring something that's a low calorie seltzer or something like that, that you can drink between, if let's say you're having 2 drinks for the evening at a party. This way you can have maybe a drink of seltzer first, then maybe say, some kind of mixed drink, another drink of seltzer, and then, if you're having a second alcoholic drink. So this way you're spacing out the drinks through the time of the party. You've eliminated all those extra calories from having your third or hopefully never fourth drink. And it's also sometimes people who aren't really nutrition oriented won't have these things at their parties. Okay. When you use regular tonics and things like that to mix drinks, they add a lot of sugar and calories to them. So I always use diet versions of anything like that, like diet tonic. In case you're wondering, club soda is fine in terms of calories and that. It does have more salt though than seltzer. So just if you're worried about salt, usually seltzer is a better option. There's one brand of seltzer though that I would tell you to stay away from, and that's Canada Dry. I was on a flight not too long ago and I was shocked when my seltzer tasted kind of salty, and I read the label and sure enough, there was salt in there. So that's the one brand I would say don't bother with. I tend to like the ones that have the flavors in them, like strawberry and raspberry. So that's sort of our preparation to going to the party. Now, if you're going to a party and they're having a buffet, okay, buffets are like the end of the world buffets these days. People put out so much food. So, I really want you to be very strategic about how you eat. So before you go over there, have 16 ounces of either water or seltzer, something without calories, just to help fill up your stomach a little bit so you're not going to overeat. Walk around that whole buffet and check things out before you start eating. I've seen some interesting research to show that most people fill up their plate with the first three things they see. So maybe start in the part of the buffet that's a little healthier if you can, rather than the really creamy casseroles and that sort of thing. I have a rule that when I go to a party, I don't eat anything that I normally eat. I really try to eat only unusual or special things because that's the time I'm going to see them and get to try them. So if I'm at, like, even at Thanksgiving, I don't load up on super big portions of like mashed potatoes because I have mashed potatoes throughout the year. But I do eat more stuffing because I only really have it around Thanksgiving time. So make sure your food choices are special foods and not just ones that you can eat anywhere. And for the same reason, I want you to think about most party buffets. There's usually a lot of starch. So there might be noodle casseroles, there's bread, there's rolls, muffins, sometimes like corn muffins. So skip the starch because it's usually not very exciting starch. Okay, so if it's not something really special, don't waste your calories on that stuff. Have the other things that maybe you really love, your aunt's spinach casserole, and it's really heavy and fatty. So save your calories for a little bit of that rather than filling up on just bread or rolls. And I always try to make sure that I get a decent amount of vegetables, either in the form of some salad or some raw vegetables on my plate to balance out the fattier things and more caloric things. If I'm taking salad, I'm very aware about dressings. Most people are not putting out low-fat dressings, so really keep it to a tablespoon if it's a regular dressing. Watch anything with mayonnaise, okay? So someone might make a great chicken salad or turkey salad or that sort of thing, but they may be loaded with lots of fatty mayonnaise. Same thing with coleslaw, mashed potatoes, casseroles. They tend to be very, very heavy. So just take a little bit to enjoy it. And the first time you go to the buffet, maybe take a tablespoon of different things that you're interested in. Taste them first. See if you like them. If you really like them, then go back and get another tiny serving. But don't take big servings because you may not like it. And unfortunately, we all clear our plates, especially at parties. So it's better just to take a little bit first and see if you really like it. Sour cream is also another place that adds a lot of calories. So if you're doing any kind of dips at home, make sure you're picking. I usually do a mixture of fat-free and low-fat sour cream together. The fat-free stuff usually tastes awful and doesn't have the same mouth feel, the texture of real sour cream. So I mix it with the low-fat sour cream to get more of the flavor and texture. But you save a lot of calories if you're making dips with that. Anything fried, I really don't recommend, especially for breast cancer survivors, because I have seen research to show that when animals are fed foods that are fried in oil that is reused, which is most of the stuff we get at restaurants, right? When that oil is given to the mice, they found that it helped their tumors metastasize. So I think we'll hear more about this in the future, but I really think fried food should be a real special occasion type of thing, not a everyday or even every week kind of food. Watch the things that are fried too, like fried onion toppings, right? Like you see salads today sometimes at restaurants with the little onions that have been fried, or and some of them too add a lot of cheese to things. I always try to look for 2% fat cheese if it's shredded. I'll tell you a couple of good cheeses if you'd like to put out cheese for your holiday platters. There's a very nice light Jarlsberg that they sell at Trader Joe's. I see it at Harris Teeter. It's Lite, and they also sell it at Costco, and it's a delicious low-fat Swiss cheese. So that's a really nice one. And most of the time, turkey, ham, they tend to be pretty low-fat, which is good for options, at buffets as well. So another very nice cheese to use is the Cabot brand. It's CABOT, and they sell some very good low-fat cheeses that don't taste like plastic, because I know some low-fat cheeses are pretty nasty. Now, one time I went to an office party, and everybody was raving about this butternut squash lasagna. And I looked at it, and yes, there was butternut squash in there, which was nice, but this poor butternut squash was just swimming in cheese sauce and butter, and everybody was chowing down like it was something healthy. And I just, I had to bite my lip and just enjoy myself. But be careful, because just because something has one ingredient that's healthy, like zucchini or butternut squash, does not make it something low calorie or really healthy. No, like I said before, if you're going back for seconds, really just focus on the things you like the most, and take a little bit of them. It takes us about 20 minutes to feel full. And so it's really important not to overeat, because in about 20 minutes or so, you may be thinking, oh, why did I go back for that big second portion? Because I'm really feeling too full. So it does take a little bit of time for your brain to register that you're full. So take your time, try to eat more, slowly, and watch it when you go back for anything secondary. Now, desserts. Okay, this is what most of us love about the holidays, right? We have our favorite recipes. My family, when we were kids, we always made, there's a recipe called 100 oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. And they're really quite tasty, but they're cookies. But that became our tradition. So my sister still makes them to this day, and they're wonderful. And I have them every Christmas. So, but I don't eat, more than say 1 or 1.5 a day, because they are very high in calories. So, I'll see if I can find it for you, Leslie. There's a website you can go on to and actually put in your family recipes, and see if you can analyze them for yourself. For all of our recipes at Levine, I give you the nutrition information. So in the recipes today, you'll see those as well. But some really easy things. One thing, looked about halfway down my page here. Notice in bold, I put the first 3 bites of food bring the most pleasure. And this is what research has shown. After about the 3rd bite of cake or cheesecake, we enjoy it, but it's not the same rush that we get from having the first few bites of it. So we really don't need big portions. I know we want them, but we have to be careful, just because we know that most things are loaded with calories. So, just be aware about that. This is why I love it when things are in small portions, because I can enjoy them, but I don't have to feel guilty about enjoying them. Right, and having big portions. Some of those cheesecakes over at the Cheesecake Factory are 800 and 900 calories. And so, like I said before, comparing it to our whole calories for the day, they're just enormous. If you have a friend who wants to get together and go out for dessert for the holidays, go out, but get something where you can split it, right? Or get a couple of things, eat half of what you're going to have, and bring it home and enjoy it the next day. It's just as tasty. And the same thing, like I mentioned in the beginning, about leftovers. Let's talk, though, about those mini pans. So these will really help you if you love to bake. So make mini muffins instead of big muffins. I notice it takes about 3 mini muffin worth of batter to make a regular size muffin. So, you can really enjoy several of them instead of 1 muffin. You could get 3 of those mini ones. The same thing with cookies. You don't have to make them enormous. That's one of the biggest things that has changed in the United States since the 1970s, is the portion sizes have exploded. And so I can remember going out for lunch, or to a Woolworth type of cafe, and getting a muffin. And it was a typical muffin size thing. But if you go out now and get a muffin, it's muffins on steroids. They're like the size of 3 muffins. And we have gotten used to eating that. And that's the problem. I always love people to check the websites for those places you go. If you go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, check and see what you're eating, because you probably don't realize how many calories are in those things. And like I said, you can just cut it in half and enjoy it the next day. I do love bundt pans. Okay. And I don't know if any of you have seen that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but there's a funny scene about bundt pans in there. But that is a great thing to cook your cakes or bake your cakes in, because you can make very slender slices. So for me, because I like to eat, I like cake, I want those things, but I don't want to eat 300 or 400 calories worth. I will take a bundt pan, and I could cut it into 16 pieces instead of 8 or 12 in a regular cake. So it really does help in terms of being able to slice things. And it looks more elegant when it's cut in that nice thin slice than it does if you're cutting it in like a 13 by 9 and making lots of little tiny pieces. For some reason, it just seems a little more elegant. Now, I do have another rule. I never eat cookies and cakes that I don't love. it's not worth it because I hate to exercise. So I don't want to have to exercise another minute. So I love chocolate. So I really, if I'm having dessert, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be chocolate, because to me, there aren't that many other desserts, except for the pumpkin cheesecake that I'm going to share with you, that I would say I will love it and I will want to eat that all the time. So really just pick the ones you love, because when someone gives you one of those boxes of cookies and you taste them and you're like, it's just okay, don't bother. So it's not worth it. It's not worth it to your body. And just really be discerning, and and try to think about that when people are. You can be polite and take it, and then take a nibble and then not eat it. You can be careful about it, not to offend anyone. But also too, if you're going to say you have a neighborhood thing where you do cookie exchanges, okay, bring them home with you, but freeze most of them. All right, leave out a few to enjoy over the next 4 or 5 days, but freeze most of them, and this way you can enjoy them down the road. It really helps a lot. Again, just like with food, bring a dessert to the party, something that's made maybe in a little more healthy way. And I will tell you, all the desserts that I'm giving you today, all are fantastic tasting. They really are delicious. And so, there are ways to make things taste better. You just kind of have to know how to play around with things. And for those of you who aren't familiar with angel cake, it's a very low fat type of cake. It's very sweet, but it's also very low fat. So some people like to have that because it's a little bit, less caloric. And also to meringues. If you like cookies, meringues are those really super sweet things. Those can be very satisfying if you're a sweet person. If you have a real sweet tooth, the super sweetness of one of those can be very satisfying. And I know Trader Joe's has some very nice different flavors of all those different types of meringues. So you might try out some of those. And then we talked before about the 3 bites of the food, and please watch out for that candy. Okay. I think it's the marketing people that have convinced us that we need the Christmas wrapped Snickers, not the Halloween wrapped Snickers. There's nothing special about Snickers. I love Snickers any time of the year, but we don't necessarily have to have them at Christmas time. And I joke around sometimes and I say, sometimes I feel like as adults now, we have not moved on to eating as adults. A lot of people today still eat like they're 8 years old, and they really want the pizza and the chicken fingers and all the candy and all that, and the soda and things like that. We need to think about long-term health and, just watching that. Now, just for any of you who haven't been to my classes, I talk a lot about how sugar really is addicting. And they have shown this through brain scans that when people eat sugar, it does set off that part of your brain that is the reward center, and it releases dopamine, which makes you feel fabulous. But it will make you crave more. So if you are the type of person where you really struggle to control yourself with sweets, I really suggest don't keep them in the house. Go out for a treat, but don't have them around, because they will drive you crazy and they will make you want to go in and eat them all. My sister won't buy her Halloween candy until a few hours before the kids come, because she knows she'll eat the whole bag. So if you're like that, just, be honest with yourself. If you aren't like that and you're okay with a little sugar, it's okay to have a little bit of sugar. And for most people, they recommend 6 teaspoons a day as the limit. And so when you're looking at a food label, the grams of added sugar is what you want to look at. And I'll send Leslie a flyer to send out to you called Be a Sugar Detective, and they'll show you how to do this. So when you look at the grams of added sugar on a food label, take that number and divide it by 4. And that will tell you how many teaspoons of sugar are in that serving of food. Now, be aware that is that serving of food. So if it says that, 2 cookies is a serving and you eat 8 cookies, then you need to quadruple all those calories and grams of sugar and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
We have a question in the chat.
Great.
That says, does sugar cause or fuel breast cancer? Is it all sugars or just excessive amounts?
Right. So that's a great question. And I do what I call the hot topic classes. I do a whole one all about sugar. So Sugar does not directly feed cancer. There are certain types of cancers, some of the squamous cell cancers, and that were on images and stuff. You'll see that the cancer cells are really processing sugar faster. Some of them have more of these transporters for glucose. Excuse me. But it doesn't feed it directly. But what happens is when people eat a lot of sugar and they get insulin resistant. So insulin is what helps the sugar that's floating around your bloodstream get into the cells. And sometimes if we eat lots and lots of sugar, our body keeps pumping out insulin, but over time it kind of gets tired and the cells don't start listening to the insulin anymore. And the insulin level goes up. And that's what they're looking at now in terms of fueling cancer growth. So what I say to people is we want to not overload the system with too much sugar at once, and we don't want to gain a lot of weight, because the more you gain weight, the more insulin resistant most people become. So it's very important every year when you go to the doctor, get your fasting blood glucose level done and make sure that you're not pre-diabetic or diabetic. If you are, then make sure you're controlling that blood sugar well, because this seems to be very important in terms of keeping cancer at bay. So that's kind of how the sugar is connected. So, and all sugars count in the added sugar. So I'm including honey and agave, some of that other more natural sugars, regular white sugar, brown sugar, maple syrup, molasses. So we have this daily limit of 6 teaspoons or 24 grams. So if you're looking at the food labels and don't want to do math, just, you can go up to 24 for the day. But the problem is most of us are getting 23 teaspoons a day, not 6, 23 teaspoons. That's a lot of sugar. And unfortunately, a lot of it's coming from drinks, like your soda or lemonade or sweet tea or Starbucks, vanilla latte kind of thing with lots of sugar added. But a lot of it's in our processed food too. I was really surprised to see a lasagna I was heating up for my family from Walmart, and I heated it up and it was tasty, but it tasted kind of sweet. And so I went and looked at the label afterwards, and each serving had 2 teaspoons of sugar in it. And that was my lasagna. So you wouldn't think about it. So check your ketchups and things like that. But, really try to limit what you add to your drinks, your foods, because you will definitely get enough, even just through your breads and other things that you're eating. And this is why we have to be careful with dessert. So like I said, if you want to have something little, that's fine. Just try to count it towards your 6 teaspoons for the day. And that's for women and children. For men, it's 9 teaspoons a day. That should be their limit. And, when you think about it, if we were thousands of years ago out in the woods or whatever, we wouldn't have any natural sugar except for fruit, right? That would really be our natural sugar. And that would come and go in the season. So we wouldn't have this readily available form of sugar to enjoy like we do today. We would have maple syrup if we were here in the United States, but if you've ever watched a show about how they make maple syrup, when it comes out of the tree, it's very dilute. It's not like it is when we get it out of our little bottle from Trader Joe's. They boil it down. So actually the sap that the Indians would have been eating would have been very, very diluted. So our bodies are not built for sugar. And that has been the biggest change also really since, I would say, in the last 40 years, is the amount of sugar in processed foods. The food companies are very smart. They wanted people to get addicted, and in the 80s, they started adding much more sugar and fat to foods to set off this sort of addiction thing that's happening in the brain. And so we need to be careful about how much we're consuming. So like I said, I love chocolate, but I'm very careful not to overdo it. Please check your breakfast cereals, all right? Because when I walk down the breakfast aisle, I want to run because I look around and it's like the dessert aisle. Most cereals have 8, 9, 12 grams of sugar. And so please try to keep your sugar from your breakfast cereal to about 6 grams, which would be having like 1.5 teaspoons of sugar, all right? You don't have to eat shredded wheat, okay? I know my family, runs out of the room when I pull out that plain shredded wheat. You can add some fun to it if you want, add a little bit of sugar, but just try to keep your total sugar to 6 grams. Another nice cereal I just came across recently was the Puffins, the original Puffins. It's a very good cereal. It has A lot of fiber, more than 3 grams of fiber, and only 6 grams of sugar per serving, which is good. So those can be some good options. But let's talk about the thing that trips up a lot of us, and that's those drinks, okay? And especially at Christmas time, eggnog, okay? I have such fond memories as a kid of the eggnog in the fridge because it always came out that time of year. And I want you to, next time you're looking at eggnog, I'd like you to look at the serving size because on there, they will claim that 4 ounces is a serving. Now, I very rarely see people drink 4 ounces of eggnog, okay? Most of us are drinking 8 ounces of it. And as you can see from my little flyer here, 8 ounces of eggnog with rum or whiskey or bourbon, whatever you like to put in it, would be over 500 calories, 34 grams of fat, and that's like 8 pats of butter. And then 22 grams of added sugar. So that's 5.5 teaspoons of sugar. So now you can see why those pounds just fly on us at the holiday times, right? You can use light eggnogs. You will save yourself a lot of calories. However, I will say they do have a lot of sugar. All right, so that's the only thing you're going to have to be careful about that. And even some of the almond flavored ones, some non-dairy ones have a lot of added sugar to it as well. Now, also too, interestingly, when you drink your calories, so let's say you're sitting down at a meal and you're going to have a turkey burger and a salad and a Coca-Cola, right? Your brain will not make you feel less hungry from the calories from your drink. They don't register in your brain the same way. But if you were to have a diet soda and eat the same number of calories, like say it's 250 calories in a small Coca-Cola, if you were to eat 250 calories of food, your brain would feel more satisfied and you would be more full. So don't drink your calories. That's my message. I never drink my calories if I can avoid it. Of course, I love wine, so I'm going to save my calories for that glass of wine. But, try not to drink your calories. It's a very easy way to save calories and help yourself not gain weight. I have seen people lose 5 pounds in a year just by stopping their daily soda. That's the only change they made. It was just getting rid of that soda and that sugar. So when you go into the party, now for breast cancer patients, I have to say this because anyone who is hormone sensitive breast cancer, okay, so estrogen receptor positive or progesterone receptor positive cancers, alcohol does raise estrogen levels. Okay, so if you're taking tamoxifen or Arimidex, one of the letrozole, be very careful with alcohol. They really don't recommend that people who have hormone sensitive cancers drink alcohol for this reason, because we're trying to keep that estrogen low. But if you do decide to drink, keep your portion small. So what is considered a drink? One beer or one like hard seltzer, or say you have a mixed drink, would be 1.5 ounces of vodka or gin mixed with like diet tonic, something like that. Or, and this is the most important thing I'm going to say tonight, 5 ounces of wine. That is so tiny. So be careful with those 16-ounce goblets you have, that I have, because if you drink half of that, you're already over the limit. Okay, so be careful with the alcohol. And as I said, try to mix in other drinks, to make sure you're not overindulging. A lot of people don't realize it, but when you drink alcohol, it does stimulate your hunger. So people generally tend to eat more when they're drinking. This is especially, a problem when you're at a party with an open buffet and an open bar, right? You can really go to town. So be extra careful with that. I am fine if people want to use alternative sweeteners, okay? The most popular ones right now would be the yellow packets of Splenda or the blue packets of Equal. Those things are usually used in like diet sodas. Those are better for you than having the 16 teaspoons of sugar in a 20-ounce Coke. Think about that, 16 teaspoons. So I'm okay if you want to use a little bit of diet, artificial sweeteners instead of lots of regular sweeteners. I don't, however, want you to go through the whole day and only drink everything diet, okay? We need at least 5 glasses of plain water a day just to keep everything working well and flushed out. Gives you beautiful skin because everything's hydrated well and you're cleansing things. Your kidneys will thank you and your lungs as well. And also stevia is another more natural sweetener that's made from a plant. And so you can use that as an alternative. And there is one soda that they sell all at different grocery stores around town called Zevia, which is made with stevia. So if you're looking for a little bit more natural one, that one is better. I can't say I love it. I've tasted it. It's okay. So, it's up to you if you like it. And I will just make a little mention, if you've tried stevia from Starbucks and the little green packets and it tasted bitter to your taste buds, then there's another type of stevia that you can find at Shake Shack and some of the other ones. It's by the Splenda company. It's called Splenda Stevia Naturals. That's a different part of the stevia plant, and it tastes better to those of us for whom the regular type of stevia tastes better. So that's what I use, like in my tea and things like that. So those are some options. Monk fruit is another more alternative sweetener you can use. So that's one you may see out there. And there's a new one out there in some of the baking mixes called allulose. It's like ALLULOSE. So there's some different options for baking if you want to. But be careful if you're going to do any baking with alternative sweeteners. Some of them don't bulk up your cakes and things like that. So you really need to use their baking mixes. Now, one thing that people don't realize too is that fruit juices, okay, a lot of those add a lot of calories. I don't recommend people drink a lot of fruit juice. If you're going to have orange juice in the morning, I want you to get in the time machine and go back to 1970 and pull out that tiny little juice glass we all had as kids, right? That little 4-ounce glass, because that's the size we should be drinking, not a 20-ounce thing or even an 8-ounce thing of juice. It's too much quickly digested sugar in the body. Watch the margaritas and pina coladas, because those frozen mixes, again, could be 600 calories. So just, they do have some light versions of things that you can use. So I've just given you a little information about the serving sizes of wine there. There are lighter beers and things like that too. And do be careful with the eggnog, okay? Because it really can add up a lot of calories. And I didn't include it in this little packet. I'll send, before I send it to Leslie, I'll make sure I find it. I have a healthier eggnog recipe that I'll send out to you too. Also too, there are skinny versions of lattes and mochas that you can get at Starbucks and things like that. So those are better for you than all the calories and the other ones. And then just a couple little tips before I talk about the recipes. So also to don't stand around the food. If you tend to stress eat or you really feel you can't control it, get out of that room and go somewhere else. Go sit in the other room where people are talking, so that you're not like looking at all that food all the time. If it's an early day party, you can take a stroll later on to help with burning off some of those calories. There is some evidence that if you take a little walk after a big meal, it does seem to help with blood sugar regulation. So that can be a nice thing too. If you're going out and doing that Christmas shopping, try to park a little farther away from the stores, just so you build in some extra steps. Take the stairs whenever you can instead of the elevator. And, we tend to be so focused on food and drinking in our culture. So maybe it's nice to make a new holiday tradition, like coming into Uptown and walking around to see all the pretty buildings with the decorations. Or maybe going caroling or even volunteering for a holiday dinner at a local place. Sometimes we need to think about alternative ways to always be thinking about food. And I know I've worked with a lot of people when they're trying to be careful about healthy eating, that they have an all or nothing mentality. So it's like, I'm either perfect or I'm going to push down that gas pedal. And I'm going to go 100 miles an hour and eat everything, So it's important not to feel like that, because what's really important for good health is the long term. It's generally how we're going to eat over years. So it's okay to have a day where maybe things got a little bit messy, or a little out of control. It's okay. We're all human. And just try to get back on track. And the next day, make sure you include your vegetables and things like that. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that's important to